Do you ever look around your house and wonder what on earth happened? You ask yourself, do I just have too much stuff, or did a bomb go off? Hi, if we have not met, my name is Shelley. I blog at tamingfrenzy.com, and today we're going to talk about how you can know whether you have too much stuff and then what you need to do about it if you realize that you do. So the first way to figure out whether or not you've just got too much stuff, if that's the problem, is to ask yourself a series of questions, okay? The first question you want to ask yourself is, look around and look at your surfaces. Is every surface covered with stuff? And I mean every end table, coffee table, countertop, dresser top. Is every flat surface just covered in stuff? Is it piled with papers? Does it have just a mismatch of stuff? But is there stuff on literally every horizontal surface in your house? That might be a clue, okay? The second thing to ask yourself is, can you find the things that you need easily? Because really the key to being organized is not getting rid of all of the stuff that's important to us. The key is, can you find what you need when you need it? And can you do so relatively easily? And can other people in your house find the things that they need to find as well? Third, do you frequently have to buy replacements? Do you have something that you say to yourself, well, I know I've got one of those around here somewhere, but you just can't find it, so you end up going off to the store and buying another one. Whether that's another pair of scissors, whether it's some gadget that you use in the kitchen, whether it's some kind of an office supply that you use regularly, but you just can't find. You know they're there, but they're buried and they're not doing you any good because you can't lay your hands on them when you need them. That's clue number 3. The fourth thing actually goes with that. Can the other people in your house find the things that they need to find or that you need for them to find? Because unless you live by yourself, there are other people living and occupying your space who have needs, who need to make sure that they can find and locate the things they need when they need them. And it's one thing for you to know where things are, but mom's not the only one who lives there. The other people in your house do not need to have to come and ask you every time they need to find something. You need to know where things are, but so do all of those other people that live with you. The fifth question to ask yourself is, do the things that are in my house, do they have a home where they live? In other words, when you bring something home from the store, do you automatically assign it a place to live, a place where it belongs, so that you know where to put it back when you're not using it, and so that other people know where to put it when they're not using it? Everything in your house belongs somewhere, and it doesn't just belong out taking up space in the middle of the floor or on the kitchen counters or on the table. It needs a place where it can be put away and then retrieved again when it's needed. The sixth question to ask yourself is, do you follow the rule of like with like? Or do you have things just kind of scattered anywhere you can shove them? Ideally in your kitchen, all of your spices would be located together. Ideally in the bathroom, all of the cleaning supplies would be located together. All of the toiletries would be located together. In your closet, hopefully all your jewelry is located together. In your office, hopefully you've got all the things that are of a certain type belonging together, rather than having just things kind of scattered and thrown down willy-nilly. When you have like with like, first off, it's easier to see exactly how much of something you have. And the second thing is then you can find those things again when you need them. It's an excellent rule to follow. It's keeping like with like. The next thing is, do you have things around your house or that you use but that are stored somewhere else? In other words, do you have so much stuff that it is overflowing your house and maybe is stored at a storage building that you're paying off-site, that you're paying a monthly fee? Now, I don't mean that necessarily that things are stored in the garage. Obviously, most of us in our garages have stored tools, painting, cleaning, repair supplies. We may have the holiday decorations stored in the garage in plastic bins. But what I'm talking about is, do you have so much stuff that it literally takes another storage unit off-site somewhere for you to store those things? Do you have so many books that they're in a storage box somewhere in a storage container? Do you have so many holiday decorations that you can't possibly fit them all in your house and in your attic or your basement or your garage? Do you have so much stuff that you're having to pay a monthly fee to store things somewhere else? And if you do, you want to do a little math, add up. What is it costing you to store those things over the course of the year? But that's an excellent clue as to whether or not you've maybe got more stuff than you really need. The next thing is, do you frequently feel like you need to make excuses? Someone comes and rings the doorbell or drops by unexpectedly for a visit. Do you automatically go into, that mode of making excuses? Oh, I'm so sorry, the house is a mess. I was just getting ready to clean. Or, please excuse the way the kitchen looks. We just got through doing a big cooking session. Whatever the area of the house is, do you frequently feel like you've got to make excuses because it's a mess and you're kind of embarrassed for other people to see it? The other thing is, are you embarrassed in general by the way your house looks? And are other people who live with you, are they embarrassed by the way your house looks? You're not the only one who lives there. A lot of people that have too much stuff, and I'm thinking now, but when you watch the hoarder shows and all, they may not think they have too much stuff, but the other people who are impacted by the way their house looks, they're embarrassed. They're ashamed to have people over. They don't want anyone to step inside the door because, they're just having to make excuses, and they truly are ashamed or embarrassed about the way the house looks. And if you or someone who lives in your home is really embarrassed by the state of the house, that's a red flag that there's too much stuff. And oftentimes we need to remember that it is not just our feelings about the house. It is important to take into consideration the way the other people who live at our house are impacted by the way our house looks. Now, a 10th thing to ask yourself is, do you have sentimental items stored away someplace else, or stored in a manner that is not conducive to them being kept in good shape? Frequently people tell themselves, oh, I just can't part with this item or that item because I'm just too sentimental about it. It was my Nana's whatever, or it belonged to Aunt Carol, or it was my mom's, whatever. And we tell ourselves we must keep something and that we just can't get rid of it because we are just too sentimental about it. But my question is, are we really? If we've got something that we say is sentimental, then we need to be honoring it and taking care of it. We don't need to store it either in a manner or in a place where that item is going to get torn up. Okay, if you've kept some of your children's baby clothes, you may be very sentimental about those items. They bring back fond memories. They transport you to back when you were a young mother and your children were young. But if you are not storing those in a place and in a manner that they are kept in good shape, how important can they really be to you? If you're storing them in a place where bugs or rodents or heat or extreme temperatures are going to ruin them, where they're going to deteriorate, then you're really kidding yourself if you're telling yourself that they're that important. If things are truly sentimental and important to you, then you need to either display them, use them, or store them in a way where they will always be kept in pristine shape. If you're just shoving them in a cardboard box and sticking them in an attic somewhere, or shoving them out in a garage someplace where they can be, again, eaten up or torn up, then you are deluding yourself. Those things are not that important. Either get rid of those things that are not that important, or decide how you're going to store or use or display them so that they are really kept well and honored for the importance that they have in your life. And then a final question to ask yourself is, do you sometimes just look around and feel like, oh my Lord, have mercy, I am drowning in stuff. There is just too much stuff here. I can't cope. I feel like I'm suffocating, or I feel like I'm smothering. And if you are having those kind of feelings about how much stuff is in your house, then guess what? Yeah, that's an indicator. Now, I've asked you 11 questions. If you've said yes to even some of those questions, then the odds are you have too much stuff. But here's the thing. You're not alone. Especially in the United States, most of us have too much stuff in our house. Things have been cheap It's been easy to purchase and bring them home, and it's been easy to fill our houses up with just a lot of stuff, Now, we may have thought it was important at the time, and it may have been, but just because it once was doesn't mean that it is anymore. Now, when you finally come to the realization that you have too much stuff, you really have three choices of what to do with that stuff. The first thing you need to do is you need to clean it up. If you've got a mess, you need to clean it up. Once you've then cleaned it up, you need to figure out what you need to toss or what you need to donate or give away. And then third, you need to organize what you are going to keep in your house so that it has a home, it can be found when it's needed, and that you're not buying duplicates, and that you are using and honoring the things that are special and important to you. You want to ask yourself some questions. As you're going through a particular area of your home, ask yourself, is this item useful? Okay? Now, we're going to have some things in our house that we don't necessarily love and adore, but that are useful, that we need to have. So, is this item something that's useful? Second, do I love and adore it? Okay, now there are useful items that I don't love and adore in my house. Okay, I don't love and adore the pencils I write with and those kind of things, but they're useful, so I need to keep them. But with other items, for example, decorative items, sentimental items, things like that, do I love it? Does it make me happy? Am I glad it's in my house? Does it fit with my life and who I am? Third, ask yourself, is this something sentimental? And if it is, then we need to figure out, how do I honor that sentimental item? How do I keep it? How do I store it? How do I display it so that it is given the respect and the appreciation that it deserves as something that's sentimental? Now, next you need to ask yourself, do I have space for it? And I don't just mean, can I find a spot in the corner to shove this particular item into? Do I have adequate space for this? Maybe you've got a collection of figurines. Do you have adequate space to store or display those? Personally, I'm a big book collector from way back. I've had to pare that down. But if you are a book collector or a music collector, do you have adequate space to store the things that you have collected and that are in your house? Next, ask yourself, is this something I can use up? Personally, I love to get consumable gifts. I love whether someone bakes us cookies and gives to us at Christmas time, or whether I get some wonderful smelling shower gel for a birthday gift. Is this something you can use up? And then here's a kicker. Once you figure out, okay, this is something that I can use up, you need to be honest with yourself as to whether or not you're really going to use it up in a time frame that is appropriate. For example, I'll give you an example. I love stuff from Bath and Body Works. I love wonderful smelling bath and body gels. I love the creams. I love the lotions, the sprays. I love all of that stuff. Last fall, however, though, I got to looking through some of my collection that I had down in a drawer in the bathroom. And I got to, pulling some things out and smelling them and looking at them. I had so much of that stuff that some of it was beginning to go bad. For example, some of the tubes of the body cream, when I opened them up and squirted a little on my hand, I found out that the ingredients were beginning to separate. It was beginning to smell a little off or have the wrong consistency. I had purchased so much or been given so much that I had not used it up in an appropriate time frame, and I ended up having to toss some of those things out. Well, I decided right then and there that instead of letting some of the rest of that go bad, that I would pull it out and let my girls go through it, my daughter and my son's girlfriend, and decide if they wanted to take any of that home, because I knew that I wasn't going to get it used up in a time frame before it was beginning to deteriorate and go bad. So even though something is consumable, you still need to consider whether or not you're actually going to consume it in a time frame when it is still in good quality. Now, you also need to ask yourself whether a particular item causes you anxiety, frustration, distress. I'll tell you another story. Years and years ago, I had a step-grandmother who loved to knit, and she knitted all the time, made all kinds of stuff, and she gave those things away to people so that she didn't clutter up her house too badly. Now, my step-grandmother and I were not close. Not at all. We had absolutely no positive relationship between us. One year for Christmas, she had knitted an Afghan that actually was a lovely Afghan. It was a street in England where she was from that had several houses, and each of the houses, the roof lines and the windows and the doors were all very different and distinct. And really, this was a very nice piece of craftsmanship. She did an excellent job. I managed to get it for Christmas. Well, I hauled that Afghan around with me, for the next 20 years or so, 20 years at least. And I never used it. I never felt comfortable using it. When I would pull it out and look at it, I could appreciate the artisanship that had gone into it because it was a lovely piece. But I felt no sentiment or anything else positive associated with that gift because, again, there had been no positive relationship there. Well, one day I finally pulled it out from the underbox under the bed, and I decided, you know what, I've never used this. The woman didn't even like me. It's not something that I have any sentimental feelings about, or that evokes any kind of warm memories. It actually just really makes me frustrated and distressed that we did not have the kind of relationship I would have liked to have had when I was a little girl. And I asked myself, why am I carrying this thing around with me and keeping it stored under the bed in a box for all these years when it really just makes me frustrated and sad? And I decided right then and there to get rid of the Afghan and donate it. I'm sure someone else found it in the thrift shop and was thrilled to get it. And I hope they were. It was a nice piece, but it wasn't a nice piece that made me feel good. So ask yourself, does this particular item give me, anxiety, stress? Does it make me upset? Does it make me sad? Ask yourself those questions about it. And then also ask yourself, what particular need is this item satisfying? Because everything in our home satisfies some kind of a need. Now, it may be a need for utilitarianism. It's something that we use that we need. Okay, that may simply be the need. It's useful. The need may be that it makes us feel that's decorative, that it brings beauty and joy into our home that way because it's something pretty that we enjoy looking at. It may be something that brings back memories, so it may have a sentimental value in that respect, okay? And it may be that it's something that makes you just feel comfortable, that gives you a good feeling, or it may be something that was given to you or that you earned that satisfies a need for a feeling of achievement or something like that. So items can fill any of those needs, sentiment, utility, aesthetic, those are all needs that we get fulfilled by our stuff. Now, once you've looked around and figured out that, yeah, I've got too much stuff, you've started going through your areas in your home to try and start, cleaning out, tossing out, and organizing and getting things in better shape. Then some practical suggestions for how to get rid of things. The first is I would encourage you to think about how you want a particular area in your house to look and how you want it to feel and how you want it to function. Something most of us will go spend a night in a hotel someplace and we walk in and it's clean and it's non-cluttered because there's not all that stuff laying around. And we just kind of get this feeling. It feels nice and we feel good because things aren't cluttered and messed. We need to do the same thing in our own homes. Not that we need to toss everything out, but we need to decide how we want an area to look and feel and function. And then once we get that vision in our head, then we can start working to downsize and get rid of things and clean up so that we can achieve that vision of how we want things to look and feel and function. And then secondly, when you're working an area, let's just get real here. You're probably going to need to purge some things. You're going to need to get rid of some of the stuff. If you're feeling like you are drowning or suffocating in your space, then some of it needs to go. Whether it needs to go out to the trash, whether it needs to be put in the back of the car so you can take it to a donation station, or whether you need to give it to a friend or a family member who honestly can use it and wants it, you're going to need to purge some of your stuff. And it's hard, but it always feels better when we do. And then the last thing to do is we need to get creative about how we're going to keep and store or display the items that we do want to keep. Now, in terms of storage, getting creative may mean that we start utilizing wall space, or that we hang a shelf up high above a door so we can get a little more storage space. Or it may mean that we get baskets that we can put items in a basket and put them on a shelf. And the items may not be very pretty, but if they're located in a basket, that basket will help hide the stuff that we're keeping and that we're using. Or we may need to think about how we want to store and display some of those sentimental items that we talked about, or how we want to use them. For example, several years ago, I pulled out a set of my grandmother's first set of china that she used, and we started using them. I decided, you know what? Nobody else knew my Nana in my family. My kids didn't. And every time I pull one of these plates out and serve dinner on it, I feel happy. I remember all the wonderful dinners that we had over at my grandparents' house, and it's just something that makes me happy. And it does no use for anyone to just sit in a box and eventually somebody who did not know or love Nana to then decide to just get rid of it. I might as well use that now. And it may be the same thing with something that you're displaying, that you want to display. Maybe you've got some special, something that someone made. You may want to put it in some kind of a shadow box or a display case and get it out so that it can be displayed in your home. So those are some things to think about when you are looking around and just trying to figure out, did a bomb go off in my house, or did somebody sneak in and dump all their trash in here, or have I just accumulated too much stuff? So ask yourself those questions, think about your next steps, and then you can work towards getting your home to where it looks and feels and functions like a place that just makes you happy all the time. Anyway, I hope you have a great afternoon, and go tame a little bit of your frenzy.